He was the calmest driver in the Fast and Furious universe. Han, the quiet legend with a snack in one hand and total control behind the wheel. But what fans didn't see after Tokyo Drift was how that role changed Sung Kang's life forever. Because when the cameras stopped rolling, he couldn't walk away from the garage. He didn't just play a car guy, he became one. And what he built wasn't for fame, it wasn't for the franchise, it was for Han. A rusted-out 1973 Datsun 240Z brought back to life with his own hands and a vision. To build the car Han would have driven if he were real. Named the Fugu Z, it became more than a tribute. It became therapy. Now, years later, the car has won awards, been immortalized in video games, and become a symbol of loss, love, and legacy. This is the story of Sung Kang's garage and the build that brought Han back to life. When The Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift hit theaters in 2006, something unexpected happened. Amid the roaring engines and neon-soaked street races, one character quietly stole the show: Han Lue, the smooth-talking, snack-eating drifter with mystery in his eyes. Played by Sung Kang, Han was unlike anyone the franchise or Hollywood had seen. Calm, cool, deep. He wasn't loud, he didn't flex, he listened, he drove. And somehow, in a film full of chaos, he became the heartbeat. But for Sung Kang, Han didn't fade when the credits rolled. In fact, something about the role stuck with him, something he couldn't shake. He'd never built a car in his life, didn't grow up wrenching, didn't know the difference between a carburetor and a cold air intake. But during filming, he found himself drawn not just to the character, but to the culture behind him. The late-night tuning sessions, the love and obsession of the real builders, the way these people expressed emotion through metal and muscle. Sung started visiting garages, not as a celebrity, but as a curious outsider. He asked questions, he listened, he started watching YouTube builds, absorbing hours of tutorials, paint techniques, wiring diagrams, and then he did something most actors wouldn't. He bought a rusted-out 1973 Datsun 240Z, sight unseen, for $500. It didn't run. The interior was toast. The frame was questionable. To most, it was just a junker. To Sung, it was a canvas, a chance to create something not for a movie, but for himself, for Han. He didn't want to restore it to factory spec. He wanted to reimagine it, to build the car Han would have built if he were real. Something elegant, something raw, something that spoke the way Han did. Quiet, but unforgettable. And so, with no experience, no ego, and nothing to prove, Sung Kang stepped into a garage as a beginner. By the time he stepped out, he wouldn't just be an actor anymore, he'd be a builder. The car was rough, really rough. When Sung Kang first laid eyes on the 1973 Datsun 240Z he had purchased online for just $500, even he had doubts. The engine was dead. Rust had eaten through panels. The interior looked like it had been attacked by time and rodents. But where others saw junk, Sung saw potential. Something Han would have driven, sure, but also something he could rebuild. That car didn't represent a flex. It was an underdog, just like the character of Han. and in some ways, like Sung himself. So he gave it a name, Fugu Z. Inspired by the fugu fish, lethal if prepared wrong, revered if done right. To Sung, that car represented exactly that balance: dangerous, misunderstood, and precise. He didn't want to slap on a body kit and call it a day. He wanted to build, to earn it. He partnered with legendary tuners like Greddy, Pandem Rocket Bunny, and KW Suspension, but he made one thing clear: he wasn't there to pose. He was there to learn. Sung rolled up his sleeves and got to work. He learned how to weld. He helped strip the paint. He sanded, masked, tuned. He got cut, got dirty, made mistakes. The heart of the build? A turbocharged RB26 DETT, the same legendary engine from the Nissan Skyline GTR. It was loud, mean, and brutally fast, just like the fugu fish. The body was widened with handcrafted carbon fiber flares. Inside, vintage race seats, analog dials, subtle nods to Han's RX-7, including orange stitching and minimalist design choices. The build wasn't rushed. It took time, but that's what made it real. This wasn't a Hollywood car. This was a car built with grief, sweat, and reverence. And when it finally roared to life, it didn't just sound like a car coming alive. It sounded like Han coming home. At first glance, you might think the Fugu Z was just another cool celebrity car. But once Sung Kang started speaking about it, that illusion melted away. Because this car wasn't built for show. It was built for healing. When Han died in Tokyo Drift, fans were stunned. But so was Sung. He wasn't just walking away from a paycheck or a character. He was walking away from someone he felt connected to. Someone who helped him find his voice in an industry that often left actors like him on the sidelines. Sung said in interviews that Han gave him more than lines. Han gave him purpose. And when that character was suddenly gone, he felt a real loss, a hole, a silence. The only way he knew how to process that was to build. He once said, "I wanted to create something that Han would have driven, not in the movies, but in the real world. Something simple, honest, powerful. Every weld, every line, every stitch. It wasn't about aesthetics, it was therapy. Grief channeled through steel. Loss reassembled into motion. It was about keeping Han alive. Not as a memory, but as a machine." And as the build progressed, Sung started to notice something strange. Fans from all over the world started reaching out, not just about the car, but about Han. They didn't just miss him, they needed him. Because to so many, Han wasn't just cool. He was a calm in the chaos, a symbol of quiet strength, a kind of cultural compass. And now, with the Fugu Z, Sung wasn't just honoring Han, he was reintroducing him in the only way that made sense, with gasoline, with soul, and with the sound of a second chance starting up. In 2015, the Fugu Z made its debut at the SEMA show in Las Vegas, one of the most respected stages in the custom automotive world. When the cover came off, the crowd didn't just react, they erupted. There, under the lights, was a machine unlike anything else on the floor. It wasn't loud in color, it didn't scream for attention, but it had presence. The same quiet strength Han was known for. Tuner icons, journalists, and fans alike swarmed it. What stood out wasn't just the carbon fiber or the RB26 turbo setup, it was the intention. Every curve had meaning. Every line told a story. People began whispering, "Wait, Sung Kang built this?" And yes, he had. Not just by writing checks, but by investing time, sweat, and something more: emotion. That moment changed Sung's life. He went from that guy who played Han to one of us, a builder, a gearhead, a brother in the garage. The car went viral. It graced the covers of magazines. It became a centerpiece in car culture forums. And soon after, it was even immortalized in Gran Turismo Sport, the iconic racing video game. But ask Sung what mattered most. It wasn't the awards. It wasn't the internet fame. It was standing beside that car, seeing people's faces as they connected with something real. Because Fugu Z wasn't about performance. It was about presence. And in that moment, surrounded by builders, fans, and flashbulbs, Han wasn't gone. He was right there, alive in every bolt, every note of the exhaust, every tear Sung held back. After its SEMA debut, the Fugu Z didn't get tucked away in a glass case or trailered from show to show. Sung Kang drove it, on streets, through mountains, to meets, in the rain. Because for him, this wasn't a showpiece, it was a living tribute. The first time the engine fired up and he took it down the highway, he described the feeling as spiritual. No music, no distractions, just the hum of the RB26 turbo engine and the whisper of rubber on pavement. He didn't need crowds, he didn't need applause, he just needed the road and the ghost of Han riding shotgun. From the tight canyons of California to the open roads of Nevada, Fugu Z started gaining a reputation not just as a build, but as a pilgrimage. Wherever he drove it, car fans would recognize it. They'd pull over, take photos, sometimes even get emotional. Sung would pop the hood and talk shop with teenagers and veterans alike. He wasn't performing, he wasn't acting. He was just a guy with a car and a story people connected with. And that's when the build started evolving again. New suspension tuning, subtle tweaks to the intake, interior refreshes after road wear. Not for content, not for clicks, for connection. Every mile added was a page in a living diary. Every oil change, a meditation. Every detour, a reminder that the road never ends if the purpose is real. And in those drives, Sung found something more powerful than any role. He found peace. What happened next would take Fugu Z from the streets into digital immortality. Shortly after its rise at SEMA, the creators of Gran Turismo, one of the most respected racing simulators in the world, reached out to Sung. They didn't just want to model the car, they wanted to honor it. Sung agreed. But only if they scanned everything. Every bolt, every angle, every imperfection. Developers flew out with high-res 3D scanners and mic'd up the exhaust system. They mapped the way the carbon fiber reflected light. captured the way it shifted weight in turns. The result? One of the most accurate emotional car editions in Gran Turismo history. And for Sung, seeing his build rendered in perfect detail, playable, drivable by millions, was overwhelming. He sat in silence the first time he raced it in-game, then whispered, "That's him. That's Han." The Fugu Z became more than a car. It became myth, a playable story about grief, identity, and rebirth. Not a Hollywood creation, not studio-approved fan service, but something personal made global. And millions of players who never knew the real story behind the build, they now drove it, felt it, experienced a little bit of Han in every corner, every straightaway, every digital mile. Because legacy doesn't always live in film. Sometimes it lives in motion. As the Fugu Z gained fame, something unexpected began to happen. Kang started hearing from fans. Not just compliments, but confessions. At car meets, on social media, through handwritten letters. They shared how Han had been more than just a character. He was someone they saw themselves in. The quiet kid who didn't need to yell to be heard. The outsider who felt at home behind the wheel. The Asian American icon in a sea of stereotypes. Veterans told Sung they watched Tokyo Drift during deployments overseas. Han's presence bringing a sense of calm. Teenagers told him they picked up a wrench for the first time because of Han. Mechanics said they watched their kids bond over the Fugu Z online, even if they didn't know the backstory. It wasn't about racing. It wasn't even about cars. It was about identity. About seeing someone who didn't conform and didn't need to. Sung once recalled a moment that stayed with him. A fan approached him, teary-eyed, and said, "You didn't just build a car, you helped me say goodbye to someone I lost." And in that moment, Sung understood. Fugu Z wasn't just his. It belonged to everyone who had ever felt grief. Everyone who ever needed a symbol of resilience. Everyone who felt like Han was theirs. The car became a traveling memorial, a shrine on wheels. And as Sung continued to drive it, modify it, and share it, it continued to heal. Because that's what happens when art meets honesty. It becomes medicine. There are drives that are just for fun. Then there are drives that mean everything. One early morning, long after the crowds had faded and the buzz had died down, Kang took the Fugu Z out for a solo run. No media, no production crew, no social posts, just him and the open road. He chose a familiar stretch of mountain highway outside Los Angeles. Twisty, unforgiving, with long, sweeping curves. The kind of road that made Han feel alive on screen. And for Sung, it was spiritual. As he gripped the wheel, the turbocharger spooled, and the tires hugged each corner with quiet precision. He didn't feel like he was driving a car. He felt like he was in communion. With Han, with himself, with every version of who he used to be. He later said in an interview, "In that moment I wasn't acting. I wasn't building. I wasn't remembering. I was just with him." It was the drive he didn't know he needed. Closure? Maybe. But more than that, confirmation. that this journey wasn't about nostalgia or ego, it was about something bigger. The build had started as a tribute, but by the time the sun rose over that canyon, it had become transcendence. Because when you build something with your own hands and you pour your heart into it, at some point, it stops being about you and becomes something eternal. After all the miles, the shows, the fans, and the healing, one question remained. What now? Would Fugu Z be retired? Put behind glass? Locked away as a memory? Not a chance. Kang made it clear. Fugu Z is a living thing, and just like people, it evolves. Over the years, the car has been subtly reworked. New suspension tuning for smoother road feel. Aerodynamic tweaks to accommodate real-world drives. Minor bodywork refinements to maintain integrity without compromising soul. But perhaps the most exciting chapter is still unwritten. Sung has hinted in interviews about mentoring young builders, starting garage sessions with students, helping others find their own Han moment. There's talk of a second build, possibly electric, possibly inspired by a modern Han had he lived. He's not just keeping the car alive, he's turning it into a platform for others. A symbol that says, you can feel lost, you can start late, you can hurt deeply, but you can also build something that matters. Because grief doesn't have to stay parked in your chest. Sometimes it can take the wheel. The Fast and Furious franchise eventually brought Han back. Twist after twist, retcon after retcon, Han returned to the big screen. But long before that Hollywood decision, Han had already come back. Through Fugu Z, through Sung, through every fan who found solace in a quiet, drifting loner who always knew when to say nothing. And that's the legacy. Not the car alone, not the fame, but the feeling that Han represents. Quiet strength, found family, the courage to drift through life on your own terms. Fugu Z isn't just a garage project, it's a heartbeat. You can hear it in every cold start, feel it in every turn, see it in the eyes of fans who walk up, wide-eyed, saying, "Is that really it?" And when Sung smiles and nods, you realize Han never really died. He just shifted gears. As the Fugu Z roars into the distance, past camera crews, past expectations, past the weight of what was, one truth becomes clear.
Legacy doesn't die. It drives.